participant list is starting to slow down a bit, so I think we can go ahead and get started. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here today, and so great to have had the opportunity to interact with many of you over the last couple of days virtually through the different presentations and forums that we've had the opportunity to learn together and interact over these past 2 days. I'm really excited to welcome you to our session today, including family voice and supporting family partnerships within school-wide positive behavioral interventions and supports. My name is Andy Garbitz. I'm at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I'll turn it over to the rest of the individuals here with us today to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Toma, and I am the content facilitator for today.
Hello, I am Dr. Jennifer Swanson-Hilbo. I'm a school psychologist and district PBIS coach, and I'm a technical assistant, so I will have my video off for the presentation.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Salva. I serve as the PBIS supervisor in Milwaukee Public Schools.
Good morning. I am Christy Stone, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service here at Milwaukee Public Schools.
Hi, I'm Devin Minch. I'm with Frank Porter Graham at the University of North Carolina and happy to be with all of you today. I see many familiar faces in the chat.
Great, thanks everybody. Really excited for our conversation today. So just to get started, since this strand, this session G1 is the first session in the family partnerships strand, we want to take a minute at the beginning to orient you all to the different sessions in the family partnerships strand. So you can see that we are here in including family voice and supporting family partnerships within school-wide PBIS. Then we also have a session today focused on enhancing family school communication and partnerships at Tier 2. And then finally, a session on partnering with families to support the needs of students at Tier 3. So some really exciting sessions today that I think you'll find just lots of really practical information that you'll be able to take back to your teams and schools across the country and around the world. Before we actually jump in, wanted to just orient you all to some of our expectations for the virtual PBIS forum. I'm sure these aren't new, as I'm sure many of you have attended sessions over the last couple of days, though we would just ask for you to keep these in mind as we have our conversations today, particularly as we think about interacting together in this virtual space, in the chat and in the different polls that we have for today. And we'll certainly do our part to adhere to these expectations as well. As you're navigating through the session today and during your time at the forum, this slide may be helpful to orienting you to your agenda or the specific sessions that you may have selected to sort of guide or organize your time during the forum this year. You can also navigate to different session pages, as I'm sure many of you did to find yourself here with us today. In those different session pages, you'll find details about the session itself, an opportunity to join the session, and then chances to interact together in chat through polls. And you'll also see some files that individuals have uploaded to accompany their session. So in our file section, you'll see a few files there focused primarily on family partnerships, and one particularly emphasizing creating a positive atmosphere to support family school collaboration. A few tips for engaging in these different virtual mediums today. You can use the chat for engaging with other participants around a session topic. You can also add in questions that you might have for us or for others that you'd like to ask as we go along the way. And then we also have a couple polls that you can navigate to in Pathable and add any thoughts that you might have to those polls as you are so inclined. It is easy within Pathable to accidentally navigate away from a certain session. And so if you find yourself navigating away accidentally from this session, you can navigate back to looking for the navigation menu at the top and reorienting to the specific session within your agenda. If you do encounter any questions or concerns that aren't easily resolvable, you can always click the help desk link at the top of the menu bar in Pathable to access some support. Here are a few questions that you might consider as you're thinking through some of the content that we'll be sharing with you today, and how or in what ways you might it might have implications for your work with your team, at your school, or in your community. So now we'll transition into our actual content that we prepared for today. This slide is designed to orient you all to some of what we'll be reviewing over the next hour or so. So we'll just start by describing some background into family partnerships. Then Christy Stone will describe a bit about Milwaukee Public Schools and the context, specifically around family partnerships and family voice. Lisa Salva will talk a little bit more about the integration of family school connections within Schoolwide Pbis. And then Devin Minch will guide us through a discussion of some of the key concepts that we've talked about today. Also, of course, integrating your questions, ideas, and content as well. We'd love to learn from you and with you today. So any thoughts, ideas, strategies, lessons learned, please feel free to pop those in the chat as you're so inclined. So within the context of this session, we'll really be focusing on promoting positive student outcomes through integrating families, educators, and community stakeholders in a holistic approach to family, school, and community partnerships. I wanted to start with centering youth and family voice into our session. Met recently with a family, including a student and a parent, talking a little bit about strategies that they've maybe wish they would have seen more of at their school with regard to incorporating youth and families in the work that the schools were doing. And so this was a 9th grade student who was reflecting on her last year in school. And so she says, they should have done a better job of making sure we were okay and we were doing fine. Reach out more to those students who you haven't talked to in a while, or you haven't seen them in school for a while. Reach out to them. You see that one kid who's sitting alone at lunch, talk to them. Just talk to them, because you never know what could be going on at home or what's going on in their head. Just reach out to them. Reach out to families. I struggle with asking for help sometimes, so make sure you reach out more. And this parent was reflecting on a similar question, and she noted, they need to make parents feel that my voice matters, that if I have something to say about how my kid is learning, it means something. You will take it to the head person and work it down and see if you can integrate it into your learning strategy. As we think about centering the voices of that student and that parent and others like them, I often think about how we can really fully integrate educators and families in a holistic approach to partnerships within a school PBIS system. And actually, PBIS provides a really nice framework or a really effective vehicle for organizing and implementing a set of family partnership strategies where we can really focus on empowering and encouraging parents to play an active role in their child's education with a focus on co-equal decision-making. In that way, the interaction between home and school environments really becomes a significant developmental context that we can use to target for interventions, such as what we do school-wide at Tier 2 and Tier 3. And we see from research that we and others have conducted really positive improvements in academic outcomes and social emotional competencies of students when families and educators work together hand in hand in a collaborative manner. If you're interested in learning more after today's session about school-wide approaches to empowering and encouraging family partnerships within your communities, you could navigate to pbis.org and find this freely accessible ebook on aligning and integrating family engagement in PBIS that may provide opportunities to do an even deeper dive into some of the content that we're talking about today. When it comes to reaching out to families and better understanding family perspectives around communication and facilitation, we were interested in better understanding some of those issues. And so a few years ago, we asked several different school-wide PBIS leadership teams across a few different states to describe their approaches for communicating with families. 85% of those who responded said that they communicated with families about school-wide PBIS. And you can see the graph here on this slide depicts the different avenues that those 85% of school teams were using to connect with or communicate with families through things like a school newsletter, a school website, and a school handbook were some of the top strategies, followed by social media engagement and maybe even some workshops that might be held at the school or in a community space. So you can see that these are many school teams are reaching out to families, though as we look at what this suggests, not many of these school teams were reporting that they were really engaging with families in a really partnership-centered and collaborative way, in a way that really sort of honors that relationship as sort of a co-equal dynamic. And so we were, further interested in, well, what might be serving as a key barrier to promoting those positive family-school connections, or what do they see as really important practices or strategies that could promote better communication and collaboration with families. And what we found that communication came up as a top facilitator, some practice or strategy that really seemed to work well for communicating and connecting with and building positive family-school relationships. But that when communication was ineffective, when it was broken, when it was problematic, it was a primary barrier. So we see the importance of communication popping up in terms of a really important strategy that we can leverage, but also important that we do it in a way that does really honor that family partnership, or else it could be a primary barrier. We also saw that some school teams were describing a lack of willingness or interest in partnering. And so this kind of speaks to the approach that Karen Mapp and colleagues have advanced around a dual capacity building framework that I know Christy Stone will be talking a little bit more about as we go forward in our conversation today. So as we think about learning together and from each other, I think it's always helpful for me to think about different lessons learned and strategies that individuals may have experienced over time. So if you're so inclined, pop into the chat any barriers that you may have seen in your work building positive family-school relationships, or any strategies or practices or ideas that you found most helpful in building positive family-school relationships. You can find a poll in Pathable, or you can feel free to just pop it in the chat as well. And hopefully we can take this these ideas as a primary outcome from our time together today, that we can look back to and learn from and better understand the different experiences that we've all had. And when we think about how we can, really learn from those barriers, identify those practices or strategies that are effective, and learn from others in this work, I think we can get to a point where we can really honor family voice and engagement in a way we can really better understand family experiences, family and values. We can be more effective in our outreach to families proactively, build positive and consistent connections with families in a way that's really considering the approach and atmosphere that we're building for collaboration, and asking questions like, do students in our school see themselves in the school? Do families see themselves in the school? And how can we really center the experiences and values and culture of families in the work that we do on a day-to-day basis? And once we have that information, once we've created a positive atmosphere and really considered our approach in working with families, we can really start thinking about a broader framework for integrating data, systems, and practices in the context of PBIS. So we're really building systems that center families and focus on partnerships and problem-solving collaboration, using proactive and positive communication and outreach, identifying resources and providing support, thinking about the sources of data that we want to use to better understand families' experiences at the school and students' experiences at the school, and how those experiences may be associated with student social emotional competencies and behavior, and how those practices that we're engaging with for and with families and youth are really aligning with and centering their experiences. So we'll pivot now to Christy Stone to talk a little bit more about the approach that they take in Milwaukee Public Schools.
Good morning, everybody. And Andy, thank you for that introduction. Again, my name is Christy Stone, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service here at Milwaukee Public Schools. I'll take the next few minutes to discuss family engagement here at our district, and also share with you why family engagement is a critical component in how we educate our students and how it helps us meet our ambitious instructional goals as a district. So I'll kind of start by just giving you a few highlights about who we are. Milwaukee Public Schools, which you'll hear me refer to as MPS, is the largest school district in the state of Wisconsin with over 70,000 K through 12 students enrolled. Our district has 156 schools made up of a wide array of options, including Montessori, specialty schools that offer emphasis in the arts, technology, and talented and gifted and foreign language programs. Over 82% of our student population is deemed economically disadvantaged, and free lunch is a benefit that we offer all of our students regardless of their economic status, to ensure that everyone has healthy meals to help them be prepared throughout the school day. We also have a robust homeless education program and a broad network of school social workers that provide ongoing assistance to students based on their specific family needs. 15% of our student population is English as second language learners. ESL services are offered throughout the district and are taught by certified instructors at various schools at the K through 12 level. We offer language translation support in over 8 different languages so that communication with families is not hindered. If there is a language spoken at home that is not one of our 8 core languages that we frequently translate in, we do have the capability to translate in almost any language upon request. This diversity in our programs, our schools, and our student population makes the work that we do related to PBIS even more important. Next slide, please, Andy. We do understand that situations happening at home and in the community have a direct correlations to our students' academic achievement and social and emotional experiences at school. Issues with crime, safety, mental health challenges, substance abuse, language barriers, medical issues, all have a considerable impact on our families, and they were definitely exacerbated during the pandemic. As a district, MPS is continuously evaluating the fidelity of our PBIS system to help effectively reduce classroom disruptions and student suspensions that may be related to some of the challenges that I just mentioned, so that we can really remain focused on student achievement. Our goal is to make sure student-wide or school-wide PBIS practices serve as a framework for everyone in helping our students achieve their outcomes. I also want to include that PBIS is working for our students. And next, in a few minutes, I'll pass it over to Lisa Salva, who will talk more about this. But it's invigorating to see the resiliency in our students who come to school every day. They embrace the educational process. They use the PBIS tools they're learning. And we have lots of success stories. And we constantly find ways to celebrate those little wins and even the larger wins that we have for our students. Next slide, Andy. Next up, we have our family and community engagement framework. All schools are striving to meet these family and community engagement standards. MPS is working with our families to make sure that they are serving as equal partners in supporting school achievement and school improvement. When our families and schools are able to work together, our students are more successful and the entire community benefits. The district MPS definitely has a commitment to increasing its family and community engagement efforts. There's a strong belief across the district that a school with involved families tend to have greater trust between the staff and families, as well as, again, improved academic outcomes for the student. Next slide, please. And here are our 6 standards for our family and community engagement framework. And I'll just kind of read those off really quickly. We want to make sure that our schools are welcoming and have culturally relevant environments. Our schools are connected to the community. Our schools have the tools and knowledge needed to build relationships with families and the community. Families have the tools and knowledge needed to be active in a school. Families have opportunities to build peer network, and families have opportunities to serve as leaders. This family and community engagement framework is supported by research such as the collective impact theory and the dual capacity framework, which Andy mentioned earlier. These 2 frameworks, we chose these 2 frameworks because of the strong focus on encouraging communication, establishing shared vision to solve problems, coordinating efforts and activities to maximize results. We always try to start from a strength-based perspective for both families and staff, and then we work to build core values at all schools in the district. Again, that shared leadership is essential to what we do. We want to make sure that we're providing avenues for families to have leadership opportunities and to increase two-way communication for families to participate. When we look at this from an equity lens, we're really striving to meet families where they are and access community assets that will allow us to help families and staff get the tools they need, again, to continue that partnership with student success. And then again, that renewed focus on creating a welcoming environment. And so helping families, recognize us, know that they can reach out to us if they have questions, if they have concerns, that we're in this to partner with them to help their student be successful. Next slide, please, Andy. So I mentioned shared leadership. This is built at the school level through parent groups and at the district level through our school engagement council, which requires at least 50% of its representation to be from the families and community. We also have a district advisory council, which is designed to make sure that parents of all students have the opportunity to share ideas about the needs of their children and to provide input on district-wide decisions. Each year, we launch a district-wide family interest survey to gain feedback and data points on how we're doing and to get more information on specific family needs. In addition to the surveys, we're now hosting a series of family focus groups to allow families to elaborate on topics such as discipline, our code of conduct, programming, and other support systems that they feel they need that would be beneficial to their child's educational experiences. We definitely try to invite our families to be a part of our internal district committees. Sometimes as administration, we have meetings amongst ourselves and we don't have that family voice at the table. So with all of our internal working committees, whether it's marketing or academics or athletics, we try to make sure that we have a parent at the table so that we're getting that input. Creating a safe space to ensure that all families have access to MPS is really an essential part in helping set the stage for PBIS to thrive. We've also developed regional welcome centers that kind of serve as a one-stop shop for customer service, questions for families. Community members can come in and get their questions answered. And they, again, just have another point of contact with not only the school, but also administration and throughout the district. Next slide, please, Andy. The next component that helps bridge positive PBIS practices and family engagement is our parent coordinators. And again, Lisa will talk about this a little bit more next in her presentation. Each school in the district has a parent coordinator that works directly with our families to help, again, build that positive connection between the families and our schools. Our parent coordinators help plan family activities. They help make sure Title I requirements are met. They help address issues with families such as attendance. They're checking in on like truancy issues, chronic tardiness, trying to find out if there's a problem that we can help solve early before it gets to be a major issue for the student. Our parent coordinators sometimes do make home visits. They work with our families to conduct technology training, and they also help connect our families to district resources needed to help our students be successful. They're essentially our boots on the ground when it comes to family engagement. Before I turn it over to Lisa, we'll have a quick video. Next slide. Andy from one of our parent coordinators, and she'll just kind of briefly share how she's using PBIS at her school.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ms. Johnson. I'm the parent coordinator over at Andrew Douglas. I'm on the PBIS committee, and PBIS helps with parent engagement because PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. PBIS allows students and children to earn incentives for great behavior or for doing the right thing. For example, at Douglas, we must walk on the right side. Students who walk on the right side earn hero points, which in turn, hero points families can look at, students can look at. We have incentives monthly for top points. Our top points this month is the Fall Festival. They have to have 300 points, hero points, to be able to attend the Fall Festival. These come from those PBIS expectations and incentives. Ours are being respectful, being safe, and being responsible. This helps parents understand what we do in our schools and what we're doing with our students.
Thank you. So next I'll turn it over to Lisa Salva. She is our district PBIS supervisor.
Sorry, I'm getting there. Hello, all. Like Christy said, I am Lisa Salva. I'm the PBIS supervisor from Milwaukee Public Schools. As I was looking at the chat, I saw some great comments about how we need to reframe how we define family involvement. And I also saw some comments about how we need to deal with some of the bias, implicit biases in our school. I'm charged with ways we involve families in PBIS in our district. We try to do that two-way communication between families and schools as best we can. Before I go into this, though, I think I need to back up and let you know a few of our structures that we have in place in our district. I am the PBIS supervisor for the district, and I work with 5 PBIS coaches, actually 8 PBIS coaches that specifically work, 5 of them specifically work with regions in our district. So they all have about 26 schools that they support and support the big systems, the teams in our schools. Every one of our schools has a PBIS team, as well as a building intervention team for tiers 2 and 3. But this is specifically focused on our PBIS. So there are many things we do to involve families. The first piece is we have MPS website resources that we encourage all of our schools to present to parents, to families towards the beginning of the year, so we can have some conversations around expectations as far as PBIS. And like Christy said, we have fabulous parent coordinators in all of our buildings. Not sure what we would do without them. They are an integral part of our PBIS. We also do those newsletters and brochures. I'm sure that every school does, but it is important that in every one of those, we really include some piece of PBIS. With 156 schools, all of our schools are very unique. So that piece is very important for our families. And finally, the tiered fidelity inventory, which we use to bridge that gap and with schools and families and schools and district improvement plans to really improve our practices around PBIS. This is the first year that we've actually used the TFI in our school improvement plans. So this is a new process for us, but it's been very positive. PBIS Tier 1 family resources. Again, we have the website that has many resources for our families, and I will take you there, talking about some of those things they can do at home for academics and behavior that really focus on that RTI framework and ensuring that students are getting the support they need. Parents need to know specific things. Behaviors are taught, like academics. All of our schools have those expectations for all areas of the building. They look different in each school. Students are acknowledged for those behaviors. Adults' relationships with all students are key. And then schools have strategies and consequences to handle negative behaviors. Now I will take you to the website and just kind of give you a closer look at some of the resources that we have in the district. Hold on, sorry. You do not see my website. This is a problem. Andy, can you let me share the screen here? I'm sorry. Can you see the website now? Thank you. Milwaukee Public Schools has family resources for all families, and you are more than welcome to go to. It's on the public pages. We are in the process of doing some updates because of parent feedback. Parents felt like there's a lot of information on here, so let's get down to the most important pieces that we need to know. So for family resources, we talk about Tier 1 as far as behavior and academics. I'm going to point out a few that we find that parents families visit more often when we look at our data as far as our hits on the website and where they're going and what they're using. So one of them is having the expectations and the common language. It's a little hard, and I think parents don't always know how to mesh that school language with that home language. So we give them some examples. But this piece, parents seem to really like. Area-specific expectation posters. Wow, these are some things that in the kitchen for be safe, be responsible, and be respectful. That is kind of merging that language that we use at school and we use at home. Do all parents use it? No, but the parents that do use it really seem to appreciate it because it seems to be a barrier on how to build that connection between home and school. The other piece that families seem to like is this expectations matrix. So having this expectations matrix for what does it look like being respectful, responsible, and safe at certain times of the day. That is used quite frequently with families. Is it used in an entirely? For some families, they use part of it, but this is a well-used resource in our district. And then the other piece is just having those acknowledgements, really, what are those things that as a parent, a family member, an aunt, an uncle, whoever, that I can do to acknowledge my student. It doesn't always have to be, I'll give you a Snickers bar, you know, and we want to move away from that. What are some things we could do? How can I get involved? What are some ideas? And these are some things that not all parents think of, even as a parent. You know, I'm not always thinking of all of these things. Helping cook dinner, those are things that families and students really like to do. So that is our website for family engagement. And next, I'm going to talk about the parent coordinators. The parent coordinators are an integral part of PBIS. Every MPS school has a parent coordinator who really bridges that gap between families and school. They provide access to resources. They provide opportunities to get involved at the school. They support student achievement. They kind of figure out what the barrier is with the family school connection and really try to support the families in making that connection. The district message from Milwaukee Public Schools is we highly recommend that parent coordinators are involved on the school PBIS team. That is kind of an obstacle sometimes due to their hours, but that's what we highly recommend. 30 Milwaukee Public Schools have parent coordinators serving on their team and attending meetings. Again, administrators have to adjust the schedule for that position in order for them to do that because their PBIS team are scheduled either after or before school. And then in our district, we have 15 community schools that really work with all of our teams to transform schools into a place where students, families, staff, and community can work together to ensure student success. And they really have that climate and culture component in our community schools, and they are a great partner with PBIS. Some of the other pieces that I just wanted to point out, and I know these are common pieces, but I just wanted to point out a few things in here. Newsletters, parent brochures, and other communications. One piece that maybe is unique about our district is we host a quarterly virtual community conversations on district and school climate, where all families can come. We have translators. If they need a translator, they can sign up ahead of time. And our first session was on October 6th, and it really focused on school climate and culture. We talked about relationships, and we really got input from those families and community members around our schools and family involvement. The culture and climate of our schools, And it was a very positive session. We do this quarterly. Next, I want to go to just one of our schools happened to really put PBIS on the forefront of every newsletter they do. You know, they have more than be respectful, be responsible, be safe. They have be productive as one of their expectations. And this is where they put the community conversation sessions in their newsletter to make sure we can have many parents from many different schools attend these sessions. We have schools like Garland School who send out their calendar every month. And on one side is their calendar where they put, you know, some of their maybe PBIS pieces and calendar items, but then also have PBIS section on the back of every month. So at the beginning of the year, they kind of put, what is PBIS? What does it emphasize? What are outcomes? And then what does it look like at Garland specifically? And then the next month, they'll have something different related to PBIS on their monthly newsletter, their monthly calendar that goes home. And parents really, really wait for this monthly calendar so they can see what's going on in the school. So that's why they chose to put the PBIS on the back, because they know this is kind of a high leverage item. They know their parents are going to read this. As far as a parent portal in our district, and I'm sure many districts have a parent portal that parents can go to for schedules, assignments, attendance, etc. But this is also a place where we can send district messages around PBIS, around some things that are happening in our district around the climate and culture. And then finally, we do have a few schools who hold a family night at the beginning of the school year. And I do have to say that going virtual has really helped us with family involvement. Going back to what someone said about reframing how we define family involvement, we have had in our district more family involvement just from being virtual, because parents have just more of an opportunity to pick up their phone and participate in something, you know, on their break or at home when they have children at home and they don't want to come to school. So one of the things that this particular school did is at the beginning of each year, they have a PBIS kind of pep rally at the beginning of the year where they go over the expectations. And they created a brochure specifically around, you know, what is PBIS? What does it look like at this school? And what are some of the kind of definitions of what teachers are talking about? What is a teacher managed behavior? What is an office managed behavior? What does it look like at home? So they have this session with families so they can understand PBIS, but then also give them a pamphlet so they can go back to looking at some of these pieces if they forget. Whoops. Finally, our tiered fidelity inventory. The purpose of the TFI is to provide that, that measure of how we are applying our school-wide PBIS. So one of the pieces in our tiered fidelity inventory, the TFI, is 1.11, which is school or student, family, and community involvement. So how are we getting input from our stakeholders on some of these tier 1 practices? So this year, we use this a little differently. We've been doing this for many years, but we felt like in our district that we haven't really used it to its full potential. So this year, we included it as part of our school improvement plan. We had 13 schools that focused on this specific part of the TFI. So let me show you what that looks like in our district. So all of our schools have a school improvement plan. One of the evidence-based improvement strategies that the PBIS team has to look at is our TFI data. And they have to analyze that TFI data specifically items 1.3 to 1.11, specifically because that's tier 1, because this piece is just our tier 1. And we actually printed it out for all of them, put it in their school improvement plan folder, and they had to look at that and choose one feature that your team did not score in place. Because of the pandemic, we had to also put, if you rated as fully implemented last year, choose something that you feel like will have a positive impact on climate and culture. And then create an implementation plan for one area to move to full implementation. So again, schools could choose from 1.3 to 1.11. We had 13 schools in our district that chose 1.11 because they felt like it was their weakest area, that student, family, community involvement. So they use that data to create a plan. So for parent and community and family involvement, this specific school, this is part of a school improvement plan, they had to task out a 12-week implementation for this strategy, for this piece, this part of the TFI. So these are the pieces they're going to do. Schedule and hold a volunteer sign-up workshop. Help parents fill out volunteer forms. I don't know how it works in other districts, but in our district, there are volunteer forms. Parents have to go through a background check. Sometimes that's an obstacle for some of our families. So this school realized that and really wants to support that family connection between home and school. Parent volunteers with prizes. They want to hold family nights and cultural celebrations. They want to celebrate our 95% attenders and having a parent get together and building those relationships with parents. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of our first 12-week implementation for this strategy, and it's not over. But when this piece is over, we want to see here that they have created the tasks. They've done it well by executing the plan that they had for the strategy and have the impact, which is always improving teacher practices and student outcome data. So how can this improve what we're doing with teachers and students? And if it doesn't, as part of our school improvement plan and plan, do, study, act, we have to then go back and help guide the schools with changing some of their practices and some of their planning so they really do something that is impactful to teacher practices and student outcome data, because that's our ultimate goal. I just said a lot. So I'm going to pass it on to Devin. I'm sure there are some questions in the chat because I just kept talking that I would love to answer and give you more information around. So you can go for it, Devin.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Christy, for all of your wonderful information you shared. This was an incredible presentation, and I know the folks in the chat are expressing how much they appreciate all the things that you shared today. And I'm just going to highlight a few takeaways for the group and welcome others to lean in and then kind of throw it back and hopefully leave lots of time for discussion and Q&A. So I hope the theme that we're taking away is finding creative, responsive ways to just bridge those connections between home and school. And that can look a lot of different ways. And being open to exploring what that looks like with your families. The role of leadership at the district and the school level and their commitment to this partnership with families and communities. It may not be paid positions in your district or school, but what might it be? How might you lean in and think about the community partners that are proximal to your families and how you might identify some collaborative, mutually beneficial goals for your partnership and for serving families. Excuse me. And thinking about, the role of leadership in integrating and aligning family school collaboration with other areas of improvement, such as your SIP or such as your district improvement plan, and really emphasizing that it's an important piece of the work and a priority. The other big takeaway for me that I heard was the important and critical role of leaning in with humility and openness to sharing power with families and really listening to their voices, hearing from them, and being open to figuring out what that two-way communication is going to look like and how to make that effective, not just initially, but over time, because things will change. And repairing relationships when needed, and really identifying, developing, and focusing on those positive. So I hope that those central themes are helpful and kind of give you some more to chew on. And I am going to lean into Ashley's expertise and hopefully, I know I saw a lot of questions come in, so I'm not sure if there are any that we want to lift up first. Hi, Sherry.
Thank you everyone so much for all of the fantastic questions. We've done the best we can to reply to some of you in the chat, so you can hopefully find some responses there. It does seem like people have an interest in learning a little bit more about the parent coordinator training and kind of what that process has been like. And I did see a question as well about a little bit more about recruitment.
I can take a stab at the parent coordinator training piece. So our parent coordinator position is a paid position throughout the district. We have a team, we actually have a family and community engagement team here at the district, and we provide monthly professional development for that group of coordinators. We expose them to just all of the different resources that are available to the district. We help them troubleshoot through specific challenges they may be having, such as getting families to come out to events, being able to, especially during the pandemic, just being a little bit more creative and helping families stay connected. So kind of whatever their needs are, we address those topics in our monthly professional development institutes. We also developed a Google Classroom for all of our, we call them PCs. That Google Classroom is kind of a robust repository where we put different flyers and resources and updates and whatever is happening. We put that out on our Google Classroom where they can grab that and share that information with families. It's also serving as a way that they can do peer-to-peer training. So if there's questions that come up or challenges they're encountering, they can reach out to and lean on each other to kind of get some of the support that they need. And then again, that family and community engagement team does frequent one-on-one check-ins with all of the parent coordinators throughout the district, and just helping them identify, like, again, what are some of their hurdles? What are some of the things they're really being successful at? We do have them submit a monthly report so we can kind of see some of the exciting events and programming that they're doing. And then we help, other parent coordinators model some of that. So we do have a lot of engagement with that group to make sure that they are successful. We understand that family engagement is critical to our district. And so the skill set of our parent coordinators is pretty vast. So we have some that have master's degrees, and then some who have maybe just had a couple of college credits. And so they have different skill sets. And so we try to address those unique needs that they may have. So.
All right. I'm not sure if Ashley, you want to take the next one, but I saw a couple come in related to if you ladies want to share your thoughts on any impact these strategies have had on your data. Have you seen an increase in family school collaboration and the kinds of data you're using to measure that impact? And have you seen it in terms of improvements with historically marginalized or excluded families and improvement in those areas as well?
I'm not sure if we've really seen the improvements yet. Just as a general, we in our district have a adult team that Christy and I are on. We're as a district equity leadership team where we work with courageous conversations about race and deal with some of the equity kind of concerns that we as a district have. That we're hoping will help with some of our marginalized families and impact our data. That is something that just started. It reminded me when someone spoke of, you know, the implicit bias and how do we deal with that bias. That is one of the ways that we're really trying to work on that. As far as the parent coordinator impact, I would have to defer to Christy for that. What I can say is, without, you know, specific outcome data, that families really appreciate in our schools that they have that point person to go to. In some of our schools, you know, we have primarily Spanish speaking families where some of our parent coordinators speak Spanish, and you know, it's very strategic on where they are, so they can support some of those needs of our families, and it's very appreciated, not only from the school but from the families who they serve. I don't know if that really answered the question, but
Yeah, I kind of, just to piggyback on what Lisa said, we don't necessarily have the data. We did kind of implement some data collection points that we're going to look at over the next year to evaluate their full impact. But, you know, on an overall level, we can definitely say those relationships that they're having with those families, again, as I mentioned, even during the pandemic, we're just, you know, critical in helping them stay engaged and get their questions answered, and you know, just navigate through, you know, such a large district, and having that point of contact has been critical for our families.
Another, thank you, ladies. And another question that's been lifted up is, once a family member is on the team, what's their role and responsibility, and what ways do you keep parents engaged in a meeting when they serve on the team?
This has been a conversation in our district for quite some time. We really like to use the parent coordinators as the go-between person. And the reason I say that is because it's difficult to look at some of our specific data around behavior with a parent at the team. So we have to be very careful to not call out specific students or, you know, protect their privacy. So the way we keep parents engaged is through the parent coordinator, through those meetings they serve, through our school-wide committees, as far as through the parent coordinator, I guess I want to say. But we don't have any specific parents on our PBIS teams. Our PBIS teams meet once a month. Ideally, our schools that are most successful meet more than once a month. We have guiding minutes for them to use. And we really have the expectation that they either have the parent coordinator on the team or communicate with the parent coordinator so they can be more successful with that homeschool connection.
Thank you. We have one more that I'll lift up. Can you share some of the strategies for ensuring that multiple and diverse perspectives are part of all parent engagement practices and in the PBIS work?
Our district right now is being trained in some of our schools around culturally responsive problem solving. So when we think about the multiple perspectives and really catering to the needs of our families, that is top priority. we do provide some training to PBIS teams so they can, deal with those diverse perspectives. But, it's an ongoing kind of process for us to do this. We're forever learning.
Thank you. And I think everyone is really kind of rolling up their sleeves and engaging in this continuing learning. And I hope that doesn't, it's not a one-time thing, that we're all really committed to that ongoing learning. There's one more I see come in. How is the parent coordinator role different from the role of a PTA or PTO person?
I'll take that one. Again, the role of the parent coordinator is probably a little bit more involved. Like I said, they really are responsible for providing all aspects of support to our families. And so they do a lot with, again, planning events, which is similar to what happens if you have a involved PTA or PTO at your school. But a lot of the events, again, kind of participating in the SIP, Title I meetings, things like that, they're all responsible for providing that additional support to families. Like, as I mentioned, if there's needs for, somebody is chronically not at school, being able to have that relationship with that family and call them and say, hey, what's happening. And sometimes it's a transportation issue. Sometimes they're, in between houses. And so helping them kind of troubleshoot some of those issues so that we can make sure that the students have the best opportunity to be successful at school. So it's kind of similar, but they definitely take a much deeper dive in terms of the relationship and execution of parent events at the school.
All right, thank you guys so much for all your great ideas and your questions that keep rolling in. Another question that came in was, how are community schools engaging with communities and families? So it was kind of specific to that community schools idea that you guys have in your district. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
I don't know if I can really fully answer this with justice here. Community schools have a, community schools plan on how to specifically engage partnerships in the communities and families through neighborhood services, through being involved at the school level with all teams. Every community school has a community school liaison, I think they're called. I'm not sure, Christy, if they're called liaison, but they kind of are that person between community schools and Milwaukee Public Schools that work in the building full time and build those connections between the community and the school. They have each school has a specific community schools plan that they implement and put in place above and beyond our school improvement plan. Right now, we're in the process of ensuring that the community schools, because they're so focused on that climate and culture, restorative practices, culturally responsive problem solving, that they have that as part of their school improvement plan, so they're not doing double the work. But that is not that old of a I don't know how many years we've had community schools, if Christy can tell me that. Not that many years, where we're in the process of building that up and really gathering more schools that would do well and be successful with that model.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about that. What other lessons have you learned from the family interest surveys, or what you're hearing from the family focus groups that you were able to kind of put into practice? So based on what families were saying and sharing, what changes were made or strategies were implemented? If you have an example or two, maybe.
Yep. So our family interest survey again is launched once a year. Some of the types of questions we ask is, getting more information about, do you feel like your school is a, culturally relevant environment? This past year, we asked questions about, what some of our families' challenges were during the pandemic, whether it be transportation, underemployment, being late, whatever those issues were. We tried to take a deeper dive to find out more information about what was happening with our families during the pandemic. We asked questions about like how they want to be communicated with. As a district, we love paper, we love newsletters, and we can send out that, a lot, but we're trying to get more involvement in like school messenger and our parent portal and things like that. And so figuring out ways to using that parent survey as a way to figure out how those families want to be communicated with, what type of programming and activities they would like to see. Again, with some of the focus groups, we want to take a deeper dive, with some of our discipline issues. We want to make sure that our district code of conduct is fair and meeting the needs of our students and our families. So being able to have that family representation there to give us feedback on things like that. We just recently used some of that focus group to get more information on. We had ESSER or the COVID relief funds, and using those focus groups to get more information about how we should spend those funds, what were our core priorities, and we wanted to hear from families first before we made decisions as a district that, we thought were best, but maybe didn't have the most impact from families.
Thank you. Those were wonderful examples. And as we're kind of going through these questions and thinking a little bit more about what's being shared, kind of the tier 1 or, district-wide, system-wide strategies that we're talking about, and incorporating some of these technology pieces. So some of the apps, some of the mass communication pieces, hopefully we're kind of opening up resources for individual outreach when needed, right? So some families are going to need a little bit more intensive outreach and that connection and collaboration, and hopefully that'll be shared a little bit more by the next session in the strand around tier 2 and tier 3. So I just kind of want to put that prompt in there too, because not all of these examples are going to match all of your families, and you're going to have to individualize, and hopefully more and more of that will be shared in the upcoming sessions. There were some more questions around sharing your great resources, so they really liked it for sure, and wondered if maybe those resources could be shared as a link and editable.
So I wonder if I can share those in the file resources, or what's the best way to do that? I guess I don't really.
I think we can.
Okay.
Okay. We'll get that and plug it in so that it is there. Maybe not immediately after the session, but if you want to check back, we can also probably plug it in to the chat. So the magic wand question, I love this one. How do you get so much involvement? And what are your tips for folks that struggle with participation? And so any insight, any tips there are always welcomed and helpful for people trying to get going with establishing some of that engagement.
I don't think there's a family involvement magic bullet. We found that, what works for one school may not work for another. I think the thing that we did find during the pandemic was being able to have a virtual option. We saw participation for a lot of our events. Now, we did have to kind of adapt, like some of our family nights and things like that, but we saw a tremendous increase in like our district advisory council and some of those other meetings when we offered that virtual option, because parents could still be home and make dinner, or if they had childcare issues, or if it was cold outside. We are in Wisconsin. It kind of alleviated some of those challenges that families may have to coming out to events. And so that's one of the best practices that we've tried to keep in our toolbox as we're thinking about event planning, is making sure that we have those options available where they can come in person, or they can join us online, or we're doing more virtual events, and we're seeing lots of success. And we are having to make them more engaging if we do offer them virtually, but that's been extremely helpful this last year.
Thank you for sharing, and I think that's a huge lesson that's being learned not only in this space but many spaces, is that sometimes virtual, even though it may not be our preference, is actually opening up accessibility and options for things and people that weren't there before. And so leaning into that and keeping hold of that as we return to normal is really key. There's just some comments about appreciating folks having the multi-component approach for including family voice and partnership is key. And there's another question related to the TFI indicator 1.1 around the team composition. So it names parent as a required team member, and just curious if in Milwaukee Public Schools do you consider the parent coordinator position as the parent on the team?
We've had many conversations really about this. So yes, a parent representative, I guess, because again, we struggle with that privacy of our students, and that is very important to us. Or we also consider having a parent involved in the team. So can they, after the meeting, get the minutes without the names, or provide input on some of the pieces that they talked about at the meeting without, disclosing student information? So that's kind of how we do that. Plus we have a parent engagement council. We have a school engagement council where parents are involved in. So we share a lot of that information there. So that's where their involvement comes in. So as far as sitting at the table when we look at the data, because that's really part of, our task, looking at PBIS, and with that, and in our information in Infinite Campus and on our dashboard, we have private student information, and we cannot, share that with families, but we can, we have some ways around it to include them in that.
I love that. So kind of thinking of that role and trying to cultivate that role over time, how can they be the voice of parents broadly, and thinking that through different ways and unique ways over time, not just for just a kind of consideration for folks that are listening, I think is key. So how can they be the voice of families without being the only voice, and how can they go back and think about how to gather broader perspectives and bring that into team discussions and take it back to parents generally as well. I think there's the comment that continues around universal tier 1 meetings should avoid individual student data and discussion. But having sat on those, I know those are tricky. That is tricky. So I hear both sides and know that challenge can be a delicate one to balance.
And I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying that when you pull up our data on our dashboard, the students are there. Like they just are. And for our parents or families to have access to that is a dashboard with our district information just for district employees. And so in order for us to have a candid conversation, around some of those pieces, we have to make sure that, we're protecting our students.
Thank you, ladies.
Well, just
so
looking
much
at the,
for,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna hand it off to you. So thank you, ladies. And here's Andy.
Great. Thanks, Devin. Thanks, everyone, for the conversation today. Thanks for the insightful questions, comments, and ideas. Hope we can keep this conversation going in the Pathable chat as well. And please reach out to us if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas that you want to share, interact about these issues. We'd really welcome the connection. Thanks for visiting today and look forward to seeing you again soon.